Let's talk more now about the Marikana anniversary, because in the studio with me is Peter Major, mining analyst at KD's, and also Brian Cantor, who is the economist and strategist at Investec Wealth and Investment. Let's start with you, Brian, if we can. A dark day, one of the darkest days in recent South African history, I think.
Yes, clearly it's very bad when police can't control a riot without shooting people. That's to me a clear police failure.
So you want to assign blame to the police?
Well, clearly the police didn't do their job. That's and that was the tragedy. I mean, you can sympathize with them if they were exposed to hostility without adequate numbers and without adequate equipment. But police, to avoid casualties and fatalities in those circumstances, need overwhelming force. And clearly they didn't have it.
What do you say, Peter? We've got all sorts of different... I mean, I wrote down a few things. I sort of decided that we have to assign some sort of blame to what happened exactly 1 year ago.
34 dead bodies, you got to assign blame.
Of course you have. It was the police, was it the mine workers themselves, was it the Sangomas with the Muti, was it the mine bosses? But what's clear to me is it wasn't just a one-day incident. This had been building up, not for days, not for weeks, not for months, but for years.
Lindsay, when you look at paragliding accidents and somebody dies, it always turns out that person didn't do one thing wrong. He did a whole series of things wrong, because we're all human. If we do one or two things wrong and die, this planet would be extinct of humans. So this is a perfect case. There were so many things done wrong by so many parties that, hate to say it was inevitable, but I think a lot of us could see this coming. Anybody that was watching their TV on mining for the last few years saw this thing coming. The police didn't do their job correctly. There weren't enough numbers, like Brian said. What are police doing with automatic weapons? I don't even know if you need automatic weapons in a police force, period. And where was government? We can say where were the mines, but...
Where's government today? That's what I want to know. I mean, Obama goes to Sandy Hook. Mariana Rajoy goes to Santiago de Compostela after a train crash. Where is Mr. Zuma, Brian? What do you say about that?
Well, we've got this commission of inquiry. It's into its umpteenth day, but yes, I suppose a lack of sympathy for the fatalities has been demonstrated.
I think it's disrespectful, actually.
Yes, but I agree. If police are exposed, a few police are exposed to a large violent horde, they're in big trouble, and the individual policeman then carrying automatic weapons is almost bound to...
This is like the National Guard at Kent State. What was the National Guard at Kent State doing with rifles? You know, to go to a college in America, there's no reason to carry more than maybe tear gas, a shield, or a baton. So what were all these young National Guards? And a National Guard is not a policeman. He's not even an army officer. So, yeah, wrong.
Look, it's a tragic situation, but let's see. I mean, it doesn't matter how tragic it was. There's always something good that comes out of this. I mean, I'm battling to find it at the moment because it's a very emotive day for everybody in South Africa. But it set South Africa's mining industry back. It set our socio-economic history back enormously, I think. But we are starting to recover. Is it good because perhaps the way that mine bosses treat their workers is going to change fundamentally, or has changed? Is it mechanization that's going to be stepped up? I don't know. Peter, what do you think?
No, those are irrelevant to this. Good can always come out of a disaster, like the Titanic, like an airplane crash, or like mine accidents. They're studied, they're analyzed. When we burned up 3 Apollo astronauts in training, they made so many changes to the Apollo program that huge benefits come after those kind of disasters. So we've got to start cataloging what have we done to change South Africa in view of this Marikana. Do we now no longer send out police far outnumbered? As Brian said, if you have massive police presence, you can almost always prevent a disaster. I don't think we should be sending out any police with automatic weapons. And they should be more in touch with their senior officers. These people weren't. The senior officers didn't really know what was going on. And what led to all these people protesting anyways? Was it bad unions, or was it no
This is what we're trying to get to. That's why I said it's not days, weeks, months. It's years in the making. Brian, can you see anything good that's come out?
Well, the issue is that the mine worker, by South African standards, the platinum mine worker is well paid.
And the rock drillers are the most skilled and also the best paid. And that's where I think the catalyst came from, the dispute by the rock drillers themselves.
Well, and there are fewer of them. Because they're well paid, there's every incentive to economize on the numbers and to mechanize. But there are many outsiders who would like those jobs who can't get them, and there are fewer jobs. This is not what South Africa needs. And I think one of the ironies of those protests was that many of the protesters, many of them, were people who'd lost their jobs in the industry and were asking for higher wages, better remuneration. Well, there's a inconsistency there.
Could you answer my question, though? Because I understand that we want to analyse what happened a year ago today, but can you see any progress that has been made in the last 365 days?
Well, the disruption of mining output clearly affected the rand. I mean, mining is not a big part of our economy, but it's a big part of our foreign trade. 60% of our exports are minerals.
Yes.
So if you shut down mineral production, you're shutting down exports, you're putting enormous pressure on the rand. And the rand, in my judgment and using my sort of analysis, lost about 17, 18, maybe as much as 20% of its US dollar value as a result of Marikana.
Well, also other things, the deficits, etc.
No, that you can see the Marikana effect took about 20% off the rand.
Do you agree with that, Peter?
Yeah, but I think it's irrelevant. I think, I hate to use the word socio-economic. We've totally changed our socio-economic way of doing things. 50 years ago, if you were underpaid, what did you do? You worked harder, you worked smarter, you studied, everybody studied, you tried to advance yourself, you tried to move to a higher job, a higher pay level, and you knew it was going to take years and fortitude and hard work. Now let's fast forward 50 years today. If you want more money, you protest. The whole world's doing that. If you want more money, you lobby. Look at the Americans.
There's nothing wrong with lobbying and protesting as long as it's done in an orderly fashion.
No, it doesn't have to be. No, orderly takes too long. We've changed. We're in a nanosecond world now. If I want more money or a promotion or a better job or better benefits, I just have to protest. The more violent I protest and the more violent I lobby, the quicker I get that.
But those benefits only come to a few. The great bulk of people without that kind of bargaining or protest power have to accept the jobs.
They come to the few who lobby the hardest.
Yes, but the issue here was, I think the mine owners or managers and the mine workers thought they had some kind of consensus. That is, we'd pay well, we'd employ fewer people, we'd mechanize more, and we'd enjoy labor peace so that we can maintain output. Now that was a false assumption. Now we can get back to that.
We have to get back to it, Brian.
To some extent, we are seeing the mining industry and the platinum miners. We saw decent report from Northam, for example, which just came through.
But why do we want to mechanize?
Just before we go on, I just want to give you an example here. We've destroyed 18,000 manufacturing jobs in South Africa over the period. I can't remember what it is. I think the last quarter. Okay, and yet the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index, has been above 50 for the last 4 months. So what's happening is the manufacturing economy is expanding, but the jobs are reducing because we're mechanizing, because we're working more efficiently. That is what will come out of Marikana. We have to mechanize.
Why? Is that good for the country?
No.
If you put 5,000 men out of work because you mechanize, you get open pit equipment.
Train them with the money that you get from the taxes from the increased imports.
Training 4,500 people out of work.
Yeah. No,
and now mechanization, you're buying all that money from overseas. Right, so all your money goes overseas.
It's a long-term thing. It's a capital expenditure to start with.
You're importing all your fuel from overseas.
Come on, Peter, it's a long-term project.
You're tearing up 10 times more ground to get the same metal out. So you're destroying your country inside and out.
You would want the unions to recognize the trade-off between jobs and wages. So that seems to be lacking because the unions represent the few, not the many. I think we've got to think seriously in South Africa, if we really want to get this right, about reducing some of the legislative and regulatory benefits that the unions have gained for themselves. The closed shop, for example, the ballot. We don't have a strike ballot in this country.
What about 40,000 men applied for the 1,000 jobs at Steelport Chrome? And how many wannabe policemen died in this training exercise in Pietermaritzburg?
Yes,
remember?
many.
Yeah.
That shows the demand here is enormous. People want any kind of job. And we got this closed shop unions controlling. Only 1 out of 20 is allowed to even apply for a job.
But the government and the unions are the same thing, essentially. I mean, we know that. So we have to start with government, don't we? And then it has to filter down to the unions. Is there a fundamental shake-up of the labour movement in South Africa that's needed? Maggie Thatcher did it. Margaret Thatcher, excuse me, the late Margaret Thatcher.
I worry this government is only concerned about votes, not jobs, votes.
Yes, but remember, Mr. Varvey has lost his job. One presumes the government and maybe President Zuma has had something to do with it.
Plenty of people to take Mr. Varvey's place, trust me, of the
well,
same...
the National Intelligence Agency.
The question is, what will the government, having, I think, demonstrated its power over the unions rather than the reverse, won from the unions. And I think what South Africa wants short-term from the unions, if it can get it, is more responsible behaviour. That is, in other words, yes, bargain about wages, but keep production going. The country can't afford these massive disruptions of a leading industry.
Let's get back to mining now. I mean, you've just been to the United States of America. You've been to the silver and zinc capital of the United States of America in Idaho. Do they do things differently there? What can we learn not only from Marikana but also from overseas miners?
Look, that part of the world mines very similar to here. It's a very high human component, very high productivity, and very high wages. And unfortunately, the wages weren't high enough for the majority of the people, and they led to an increased marginality. So today, instead of 10 silver, lead, zinc mines running, as we had in 1980, we have 2 lead, zinc, silver mines. They've tore down the smelter, they've tore down the refineries, and now the 2 lead zinc mines, they can't even refine the metal, and they tore up the railroad tracks, just like South Africa, so they have to put it on trucks and demolish the roads, and it's made those mines very marginal. So at $20 silver, they can barely make money, and they used to make money at $5 silver.
Is there a parallel to what's happening in the platinum industry, the PGM industry in South Africa?
Enormous parallel. You'd think you're in the same place, Lindsay.
But the challenge, and they may be meeting it, is to get those costs under control. And there is a sense that is happening finally that the
so there's a positive that's come out of this.
Yes, and you've got a weaker rand to help you. So there's a bigger operating margin.
And because we've closed a lot of these platinum mines, the platinum price is now higher, so it allows the few remainers to at least survive. And
that provided you can maintain output. And I think there is a sense in the market. I mean, we've seen a nice run in the resource stocks, the platinum stocks included. There is a sense that maybe production will be sustained, rather more happily than was previously expected. So perhaps some of the effects of dislocation are coming out of the price.
So
becoming more.
It was a few months ago that I was in this very studio with you. I think it was Brian actually, and I was putting forward the idea that perhaps this is a sunset industry, the PGM industry in South Africa. Gold's been a sunset industry since 1970, when we last produced over 1,000 tons of the stuff. Yes. I thought perhaps that the PGM industry was going the same way, Peter. Obviously, that's an exaggeration.
No, you're right. Gold's been in a sunset industry since about 1987-88, when it employed 500,000 men. And platinum's been in a sunset industry probably the last 3 years. I think when the number of men start declining, that's when you say it's a sunset industry.
Well, they haven't managed their costs very well. They've expended, capital expenditure has been mammoth, and the outcomes are very disappointing.
That's the fastest way to have a sunset industry, yeah.
So leave it there. On that note, sunset industry, let's hope it doesn't occur. Peter Major, Katie's, thank you very much. Brian Cantor, Investec Wealth and Management, thanks very much for coming in. Fascinating chat.